bust out the Gray's Sports Almanac and see if I can get a win.
Rip your sleeves off.
Rip my sleeves off. I'm doing it.
Our nation has never been safer, other than maybe through the air, because the Air Force stinks.
I'm going to go for a team that has 0 wins on the whole season.
Why are you doing this?
The Big Bets on Campus podcast.
All right, here we go.
Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. It's the Group of 5 Deep Dive. I am Mike Calabrese, joined as always by Mike Iannello. We're going to go through the entire Week 8 card in G5 lands, hit you with our best bets, our G5 heroes of the week, kind of mismatching here. Also, the round robin, where we're going to give you our 5 picks that you can package together in any way, shape, or form, and our Underdog Moneyline Parlay. So a lot to get to here. A little bit of recap from Week 7. It was more of an opportunity for the P4 to shine as opposed to the G5. But in terms of our teams steaming towards a potential showdown in the Mountain West Conference, Boise wins, UNLV drops a 50 burger on Friday night, so they're moving in the right direction. And Army and Navy now ranked in the AP top 25 at the same time for the first time since 1960. So it's good to see the service academies peaking. I know they've had some advantageous scheduling, but I'm very excited to see what a collision late in the season, maybe in the AAC title game, maybe getting a double dip in Army-Navy the following week. The fact of the matter is they are right smack dab in the middle of the chase for the college football playoff, getting that G5 auto bid. So lots of exciting stuff for us to cover. I know I'll go to you first. Your thoughts on Week 7, and maybe you can kick us right into your hero of the week.
My thoughts are I suck, and I'm depressed, and I'm ashamed. Yeah, no, in all honesty, it sucks. I obviously had a terrible week. I think I went over on the show. I've had a bad season. I think Stuckey does a really good job of this, of just, kind of encompassing I get we're supposed to be experts and we do our best to provide quality handicaps and information. I think anyone who has listened to us for 4 years would attest. I think we're pretty good at this. Yeah, it's been a bad year. I mean, I think both of us kind of on the show haven't been great like we normally have. I think our best bets have been okay. We're obviously the 2 dogs, but yeah, no, I'm having a terrible year, especially on the show, and it sucks, and I hate it, and it ruins my weekend every week. So
you're not jumping into the transfer portal. Is this what you're hitting me with? You're going to another show?
No, unlike Trent Dilfer, I'm putting my hand up, and I'm taking responsibility and blame. I've been bad, and if people want to tell me, I don't blame you at all. I'm going to try to find some winners here. But yeah, it sucked. I'm depressed, and the one thing saving me, as always, is Army-Navy. We've been hyping them up all year. G5 Hero of the Week, Bryson Daly. Just
mine too. Can't wait to give him the flowers.
The absolute daily double on the ground, through the air, 4 touchdowns rushing, touchdown passing, 11.3 yards per carry, 14.5 per pass. Obviously, they smoked UAB, which makes it even sweeter. We love piling on. Trent Dilfer's already packed in his bags. You mentioned it. Army's 23rd. Navy's ranked 25th. Look, our nation has never been safer, other than maybe through the air, because the Air Force stinks. But we have the land and the sea on lockdown, and our nation's enemies are just shaking in their boots watching these 2 offenses. I said it on our playoff show, Army's going to make the playoffs. They're going to go 11-1 at worst. They could go 12-0. They could be Notre Dame. You're more of a Navy guy. I'm all in on Army this year. Bryson Daly, my G5 Hero of the Week.
Yeah, I'm going to keep the good times going. Prior to this season, Army hadn't had a player account for 5 or more touchdowns in a game in 29 years. Bryson Daly has now done it twice in less than a month. This is how crazy the season is getting for Army. They've now won 10 in a row, which extends the longest win streak in America. As you mentioned, the Trent Dilfer farewell tour continues. They just beat the brakes off them 44-10 in that blowout win over UAB. Love seeing that. Also, doing more of a deep dive on Daly, it wasn't just a 1-week wonder. The kid is 4th in QBR in the entire country. ESPN has a metric, if you go across and, filter by some of their tabs, they have a run metric. It's clutch-weighted expected points added through rushes by quarterbacks. So you go to the QBR section for them and you click on run. He leads the country. He's ahead of Blake Horvath at Navy as well. And what I also love in situations like this, I like to do a quick deep dive on any personal thing. He's on an engineering track at Army. Not that there's any majors that you can just coast on while with Army, but he is one of those special kids who is not only an offensive captain, but is someone that has a bit of mystique around him. And as I dug into it, apparently he was a hothead as a kid. He lost his temper regularly. So his grandfather would tell him, cool head, hot heart. He's got that tattooed on his arm. What are we seeing this year? He runs the offense absolutely perfectly. But when there's an opportunity for him to be a bull and just run people over at the goal line, he's an absolute monster. He is a behemoth in red zone opportunities. He's got that hot heart. He's passionate. You can see it whenever he scores. Usually there's some subdued celebrations from servicemen. Not when he gets in the end zone. He's pounding his chest. He's chest bumping his offensive line. So Bryson Daly, a big old salute to you as our G5 hero of week 7.
You said it's his grandpa who said that?
Yes.
I like to picture his grandpa just looks at him and goes, cool head, hot heart, and he just yelled, "Can't lose."
Yeah, I mean, he's also from Texas, so it makes sense. It all goes together with Friday Night Lights. Let's hop right into the best bets here in week 8. I'm going to go for an over. Shocker. It's been something I've been addicted to this entire season. I think the worm has finally turned for me after some bad beats. I think the over train is ready to leave the station. Let's start it here. North Texas at Memphis. The total sitting at 66.5. This number is predicated on Memphis's offensive regression in the past few games. But my question here right off the top is that a mirage for the Tigers? Because when you look through it, against USF, they scored 21 points in an 18-point victory, only 7 points in the final 3 quarters. That's usually alarm bells for potentially getting off the overtrain. But they missed a field goal in that game. They had 2 turnovers on downs. They still got close to 350 total yards of offense. So yes, it was not their best offensive performance, but I think there was a bit of hidden points that were left on the board in that game. The week before that, they scored just 24 against Middle Tennessee, but they had over 400 yards of total offense in that one. They also missed a field goal, and they played very conservatively in the second half, protecting the lead. Here's what I know about this game against North Texas. North Texas is going to score, so playing not to lose, playing conservatively is not on the table. The Mean Green are 5th in total offense and score over 40 points per game. So Memphis has to bring it, everything that they have offensively that perhaps they've been holding back in runaway wins in the past 2. They now have to leave it all on the table. What I know about North Texas as well is they have 11 scarecrows on defense. It's spooky season. It's Halloween time. They have XL bags of leaves that are decorated as jack-o'-lanterns on their front lawn. This defense can't stop anybody.
We saw last week with my pick. I mean, they made Cam Fancher look like Joe Montana.
Their pass EPA, 105th, 106th in tackling per PFF, 133rd in pass rush. They can't get to the quarterback, which, unsurprisingly, they're bottom 15 in havoc. This is the remedy for the Memphis offensive blues. They are going to get off the mat, and they're going to be able to run. They're going to be able to pass. There's going to be lots of time for Seth Hennigan in this game. And then finally, tempo is so important when you're going over a high number like this, sitting in the mid-60s. Memphis, 12th in plays per game. North Texas snaps at every 23.3 seconds of game action, which is the 14th fastest in the entire country. My numbers call for this total to be at 71 or 71.5, so almost a full touchdown worth of value. I'm going over here. What are your thoughts? Having watched a lot of North Texas games, doesn't this scream over to you?
Yep, this was one of the ones I kind of was toying with. I didn't write it down, but I had it toyed with coming into the show. I think it's one of those ones too where, again, as I mentioned, maybe not, we haven't had the best year. This is one of those bets where even if it doesn't cash, you'll be like, I'm glad I watched that game. It was fun. And like, it might lose, but you won't feel stupid after. Like, when you take like an Iowa, Minnesota over because the number's too low, and then you watch it and it's 10-3, and you're like, why the hell did I bet that over? Like, this is one of those ones where, like, even if it loses, you'll be like, you know what? I still would probably take it again because it was fun and they're great offenses and like it should hit. So this is going to be a fun watch. It's going to be an exciting game. I agree with you. I think you mentioned everything. We've seen North Texas offense and their defense. We know what we're going to get from there. And I think Memphis feels like they just still have another gear to hit. And
yes,
sure, if this loses, it's because the same thing happened. They hope to have 400 yards passing and only 2 touchdowns. And you're like, what the hell happened? But if they flip the switch, they score 50 and this goes over easily. So I like it. I'll play it with you as well. Going to my best bet. Look, as I said, if you want to tell me this week, go for it. If you're sticking with me and you're ride or dying, I appreciate the loyalty, especially because I'm taking Tulsa +3 against Temple.
It was cutting room floor for me. I almost did it. So yeah,
better. Like, the only way to get out of a hot streak is to just dig yourself deeper into the sewer, or get out of a cold streak. There are only 3 or 4 teams in the country that Temple should be favored over, and I don't think Tulsa is one of them. We mentioned earlier in this year how Tulsa has been more competitive than we thought. Yeah, they lose by 30 every week, but their schedule's been really hard. They certainly are a good team, but they are better than Temple pretty much across the board. Tulsa is 97th in yards per play. Temple's 126th. Defensively, the Golden Hurricanes are 94th in success rate. The Owls are 98th. So it's like they're not good, but Temple's just worse. Tulsa has been strong against the run this year, and Temple can't run the ball at all. So that's kind of taking away that aspect of the game is not going to be a problem. That's not going to be existent in this game. And the Owls, they showed some life with Evan Simon taking over at quarterback. He helped us cash that over against Army, one of the big overs you did hit. And he hasn't played since. Forrest Brock started last week against UConn. He continues to be terrible. Now, Simon has been cleared to play this week, but Drayton came out and said he's unsure who will start because Simon hasn't thrown a ball in 3 weeks. So not the most brimming of confidence from that. And, Tulsa continues to use multiple quarterbacks, which I typically don't love, but they kind of have a good system going where Kirk Francis is the passer, Cooper Legat is the runner. And the Golden Hurricane have actually run the ball pretty well this season. They're averaging 4.9 yards per carry. Anthony Watkins, Bill Jackson, they both looked good running the ball. Legat had 81 yards and a touchdown on the ground against Army in their last game out. Both these teams are coming off a bye, so no real rest advantage there. But I think Tulsa has more pieces to plan for. They have Benjamin, they have the running backs, they have the two quarterbacks, where Temple's entire offense is just Dante Wright. So you basically had 2 weeks to try to take him out, where Temple has to try to take out 4 or 5 guys. So, Dante Wright has 42 catches for Temple. Their next closest receiver has 11. He's their whole team. Take him out, win the game. They're 2 bad teams. Give me this. First of all, you're wearing the Eagles hat. Lincoln Financial Field is 0 home field advantage for Temple. So these are 2 bad teams. You're giving me 3 points. I'll take them. I'm taking the Golden Hurricane here.
I'm glad you brought up that final point. There is 0 home field advantage whatsoever. There will be friends and family and then probably 600 people at this game who are not directly connected.
My best friend, since I was 2 years old, went to Temple, now works for Temple, lives like 3 blocks from Temple, and I always text him, you and me, we'd talk. I'm like, hey, they play a Thursday or Friday night game. I'm like, hey, you want to go to a Temple game? And he's like, God, no. Love sports, like huge sports fanatic, just like, no. It's Friday night, dude. I'm not going to the Temple game. Okay.
It's a tough sell, particularly with this team, with this offense, as you point out. Dante Wright, appointment television, but if they can just double him in this game and, at least hold him under 100 yards receiving, I think you're on the right side of this. As I mentioned, the Golden Hurricane were just on my list, not quite making it here in week 8. All right, we now turn to the G5 High 5 picks, put them together in a round robin, put it in a parlay. Just pick out your favorite, throw some money down on that, however you want to dice these picks up and sprinkle them all over your Saturday and in some cases weekday card. Feel free to do so. I'm going to get things started here. I'm doing 3 of the 5 picks, so I got to bring my A game. And I'm going to start with a team that I still think we're buying low on them. I think they can get it together in the Sun Belt, and that's Arkansas State, laying a touchdown at Southern Miss. Southern Miss has quit, all right? 4 straight double-digit losses. South Florida got right against them, dropped 49 points. Otherwise, South Florida has been a mess this season. Jacksonville State's taken flight after beating them 44-7. Even UL Monroe crushed them by 17 points. They laid it on in the fourth quarter, moving away from them late in that game. This is the team that you need to play to feel better about your offense. One guarantee with this play is that when Arkansas State gets in the red zone, they're going to score. When they're up against Southern Miss, this is a defense that gives up scores on 87% of opponent trips inside of their 20. That's bottom 15 in the entire country. You know what else they're bottom 15 in? Coverage in the red zone. They really struggle in pass coverage in those tight windows. And this is important for an Arkansas State offense that is just 80th in quality drives. They don't have a ton of opportunities on the season. So when they get in there, they can't waste them. And against Southern Miss, I think this is the team to take advantage of them. But let's back up a second. Why are we getting this price? Because when I first saw it, I was like, is this a trap? This feels a little bit trappy against the Golden Eagles here. Well, Arkansas State's been blown out by Iowa State, who's now 9th in the country, by the way, by Texas State, who could very well win the Sun Belt. I think that's an overreaction by the public to them getting their brains beaten in really left and right for the past month. They still have weapons like Jalen Rayner, Jaquez Cross, who just went off, by the way, against Texas State. I know they got blown out in the second half of that game, but he finished with 165 all-purpose yards, and that's critical for a Red Wolves team that needs him to be both a threat in the run game and the pass game. Corey Rucker still has 3 games on this season with 6 or more receptions, so he's still a viable threat as their top wide receiver. This is going to be a bowl team, in my opinion. I think they're going to get it together, and the messaging is important on that front because I said at the top, Southern Miss has that quit factor going for them. On the other side, Arkansas State, they got to look at themselves and say, the brutality of our schedule, all those paycheck games, that's behind us. We have clear-cut opportunities for wins ahead of us. Southern Miss in this game, Troy, and Old Dominion. They win those 3 games over the next 6 weeks, they're going bowling. It has to start here, so I think you're going to get premium effort out of the Red Wolves. And one final nugget that I love when hoping to avoid a backdoor cover. Southern Miss is dead last, 134th nationally in havoc allowed. That means tackles for loss, sacks, forced fumbles, interceptions. They're all on the table every single snap. So there's a chance for this to snowball away from Southern Miss. That's why I'm not afraid to lay 7 here. I'd lay up to 10. What are your thoughts on Butch Jones? Butch better have our money. Am I right?
Yeah, obviously I've been high on Arkansas State all year. They haven't come through for us a couple times, but I'm with you. I still think there's enough talent in that offense and on that team. And you mentioned the quit watch on Southern Miss. Yeah, I think our boy Will Hall's days are numbered. I think it's one of those teams. I'll say something nice about Southern Miss. Frank Gore made his NFL debut Monday night for the Bills, which was cool. I don't think he got a carry, but he did play, or was active, which was cool to see. And I think we've seen, Frank Gore did so much for that team. He was the human break glass in case of emergency, and they did on every play. He played quarterback, he played running back, he played receiver. He covered up so many holes on this team, and probably gave Will Hall an extra 2 years, just by sheer will. And now he's gone, and I think it shows. And they're just, by losing him, they're basically worse at 3 positions. So I think it's really, really showing. So yeah, I like it. All right, for my pick, look, I'm very curious to see your take on this one. You're either going to love it or hate it. Nothing in between. I know we talked about this Army offense and how good they are.
You're going East Carolina. Oh,
no,
boy.
I'm going under 51.5, because let's not sleep on this Black Knights defense. They have yet to allow more than 14 points all season. They have allowed over 300 total yards in a game once, and it was 303 last week.
They are giving those games down.
They are giving up 9.8 points per game. That is second in the country, only to Texas, who is the number 1 team in the country. Army is 5th in the nation at preventing explosiveness. They just do not give up big plays. You have to move the ball down the field slowly and steadily. And I am not a fan of this East Carolina offense. I've been down on ECU kind of all year. Jake Garcia was just a walking turnover. He threw 12 interceptions this year, got benched for Caton Hauser. In his first start, Hauser went a glorious 11 for 28. That is a 39% completion rate for 84 yards and a pick. He was very inaccurate last year at Michigan State. He had 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And again, he couldn't beat out Garcia. So I don't think he's the answer. They can't really run the ball either. I don't know how they're going to score on this Army defense. But the one thing East Carolina is very, very good at, stopping the run. They are 5th in the country at rushing success rate on defense. They're allowing just 3.4 yards per carry. We saw last year they held Navy to 10 points and allowed just 174 rushing yards on 50 carries. 2022, it was 23-20, and Navy had 191 rushing yards on 66 carries. This run defense is very, very good. And I just don't trust the Pirates to score on this defense. And as long as they just don't, keep turning the ball over and giving Army short fields, you mentioned Army's going to slow this game down. They're going to limit possessions. I think they stay under this number unless they're throwing up pick sixes. It's a big number to lay with the Service Academy, but what's the final score here? 30-10. I don't think ECU can score here. And I think ECU's run defense can do just enough to kind of not let Army score 50 by themselves.
Well, you inspired me with one Service Academy play in a way here. I'm going to go. It's been a while. I've been keeping this on the shelf. I wanted to do it. I wanted to go back to the future with Biff, bust out the Gray's Sports Almanac, and see if I can get a win.
Rip your sleeves off.
Rip my sleeves off. I'm doing it. I'm going Charlotte plus 17 at Navy. Welcome to the Sean Purdy era. Last 2 starts, Charlotte 2-0. You got to cue up the coach from Major League. We've won 2. You win 3. It's called a winning streak. 2 money line upsets in a row. In those 2 games, the 49ers have scored 76 points and ran up 821 yards of total offense. The running game has really popped. Against ECU, they had 311 on the ground and 6 touchdowns. Holy moly, what a performance there. Can they move it on the ground against Navy? This is the question. The Middies are 74th in rush EPA. They're outside of the top 100 in stuff rate. Thank you. Hat tip to Colin Wilson for his exhaustive spreadsheet with every single statistical nugget you'd want to find. So on paper, Navy definitely not world beaters in the box. When they faced off against a really strong running game, don't forget that Memphis game that launched their whole season and put them in a conversation to make it to the college football playoff. They still gave up 274 yards and 4 scores on the ground in that game. Huge chunk runs left and right. Charlotte is a far cry from Memphis, I know. but they're simply playing so much better offensively with Purdy as the starter. Could we see Max Brown in this game? Maybe. Could we see Trexler Ivy in this game? Perhaps. But Ivy has flashed at times this season. So if it's him and Purdy and they mix and match, I feel okay with that. This play is not predicated on excellent quarterback play. Purdy, even in the wins, hasn't had to do all that much with his arm. Not a huge threat, the freshman out of Baltimore with his legs. But I still like what's happening with this team because they've been downtrodden for so long. Once you get to 3 wins where they're sitting right now, all of a sudden bowl eligibility doesn't look crazy, and you're up against a Navy team where there's limited possessions. Navy's going to shrink this game down. So any turnover that you catch when you're catching 17 points, that becomes magnified against the Service Academy. Charlotte is dead even in turnover margin on the season, but when you look at what they've done defensively, they're top 40 in havoc. So I think they're due for a little bit of positive regression in terms of the turnover margin. And finally, I wanted to put this out there. I've been banging the drum for Army and Navy all year. But now there's a half season worth of film on Drew Cronick's wing T triple option hybrid, and Charlotte isn't a complete mess against the run as they've been in previous years. They're inside the top 100 in rush success defense, line yards, stuff rate, rush EPA. Like I said, I don't expect them to shut down this Navy team. All I need is 1 or 2 turnovers in a game that's going to have limited possessions. I think 17's too many. We've talked about it for years. Nobody really feels comfortable with a triple team, a Service Academy team, laying huge numbers north of 2 touchdowns. They've been covering left and right. I think this is when they finally get bit. The 49ers make this a 4-quarter battle. I'll take Navy by 10 in this game, and I think they steam ahead closer to that AAC title game berth. But I think Charlotte is now officially pesky. They're feisty. Give me the 17 and the 49ers.
Yeah, like I said, I like what Biff's doing. I bet over 3.5 wins at the start of the year, so I only need that one more. I don't think it comes here, but I don't hate the play. I think you remember too, back to the preseason when Biff came out before their opener and said like 50% of their starters were hurt. They were probably going to miss 2 to 3 weeks, most of them. All right, those 2 to 3 weeks are gone, and they've won 3 of their last 4 games. So you mentioned, it's not just like they magically started getting better. It's like, no, they were hurt. They started getting guys healthy. Most of those injuries were on the offensive and defensive line. So obviously they lost Max Brown after the fact. But I think you've seen the offensive line and defensive line really shore up as the season's gone on. They brought in a bunch of Power 5 transfers. Those guys were hurt. Now they're playing. Now they're looking good. I know, math and trends, obviously, I think Stocky's been banging this drum for years about like a Service Academy laying over, 14, and then on the flip side, take them if they're a dog. I would say that Army and Navy look so good this year that I am not playing that principle. It does scare me away how good they've looked. So I'm not playing Charlotte, but I'm not playing Army or Navy this week. I haven't played them, I think, the last 2 weeks because of the same number. But yeah, so I would say I'm not going to play with you, but gun ahead, if I had to pick a side, I would pick Charlotte as well. But Navy just scares me. But I think you're on the right side. All right, I'm going another kind of gross one, but hopefully not as gross. Kind of same logic with the Tulsa pick. Give me New Mexico -1.5 against Utah State. Utah State's terrible. Their defense is horrific. Against FBS teams this year, they have allowed 48, 38, 45, 62, and 50 points. Temple scored 45 points on them. They rank 131st in total defense, 132nd in scoring defense. They're in the bottom 10 against the pass, bottom 10 against the rush. And this New Mexico offense, you've been on this train all year, has been pretty good with the human highlight reel, Devin Dampier. He is awesome to watch. The Lobos are 38th in the country in success rate on offense. Dampier has thrown the ball pretty well, minus the turnovers. He definitely has to clean that up. But his biggest strength is his legs. And he leads the team with 63.7 rush yards per game, 8 rushing scores. New Mexico has 3 really good running backs that they use. All have at least 30 yards per game. Eli Sanders is the lead back there. They have averaged 7.5 yards per play in each of the last 2 games. They put up back-to-back 50 burgers. This offense is cooking right now. We know Bronco Mendenhall is a terrific coach. We have years at multiple schools of evidence of that. His team has looked better and better each week. I think they're going to continue to build momentum. And Utah State is officially on capital Q quit watch. I think they've given up. We talked about it last week. Coach gets fired in the summer. They have an interim coach that they barely know. This team's given up. I really like New Mexico. I love Bronco. I like what they're doing here. If Utah State's going to give up another 50 burger, I find it hard to believe their offense is going to keep up here.
did you have any interest in the absurdly high total, even rich for my blood, at 78.5? Did you think about going over?
No, God, no. Because, like, if it goes over, it's because New Mexico scores 60. So I'll just take them. Maybe take their team total. If you're worried about Utah State's offense all of a sudden humming, take the New Mexico team total.
Yeah, my recommendation here, because it was a lean for me on New Mexico. If you're in a state where you can play player props and same game parlays, take over on Royals for Utah State. That's where all the passes go. And go ahead and take over on the team total and lay the points with New Mexico. See what that spits out in a
You do, if you want, most like books offer like boosts or free plays for 3 games. So throw like a Dampier anytime touchdown. Dampier anytime touchdown, New Mexico team total, Royals receiving yards over. I think that's a pretty good parlay.
All right, I'll close out the G5 high five. Fading one of the worst teams in the FBS, not just this year, but arguably in the last 20 years of college football. Talking about the Kent State Golden Flashes going to Bowling Green. Bowling Green took the money. They got beat up. They threw a huge scare into Penn State early. They get knocked around at A&M. They've made it out of the early portion of their season, but the wins aren't stacking up just yet, so I've been waiting to play the Falcons. They're laying 21 here. This is simple. According to Loeffler, their head coach, Bazelak is day-to-day better than anticipated. He said they'll know more at the end of the week. Hold off, even if this line moves up to 24, 24 and a half, make sure that you secure the information that Bazelak is starting. Because if he does, I think this offense will light up Kent State. The Golden Flashes are the only team in the S&P Plus, according to Bill Conley, outside of the top 130 in both offense and defense. They almost made it a clean sweep. Their special teams is sitting at 129th. Shout out to Stuckey with Max special teams. I love Bill Conley. I love the work that he does. He puts together the top 264. That's every level of college football played in America. So all the way at the top, you got Texas. All the way at 264, you got something called Crown. You know where Kent is rated? 195th, behind Division II Washita Baptist in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. That is how bad Kent State is this year. And I know that Tommy Ulatowski got plenty of love in Van Pelt's bad beat segment from last week. Kent scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, much of it in the final few minutes. But so much of that was a wash in penalties, broken plays, pure luck. The defense for Ball State got a stop. They had a roughing the passer. They had this absurd catch and run, all this nonsense. Critically, Bowling Green can stop the pass. They're 38th in passing success rate on defense, 38th or 36th in pass EPA. They're a one-trick pony in terms of what Kent State's going to do. They're going to be playing from behind. They're going to throw it a lot with Ulatowski. I like the fact that that's a strength for the Falcons, whereas I'll probably fade them in other spots in MAC play because of their issues on the ground. You can move Bowling Green in the front. You can open up holes. Kent is awful in that regard. They're 130th in run blocking and a matching 130th in run success, all according to Pro Football Focus. Like I said, this is a bad draw for Kent State in this spot. If Bazelak is a go, like I said, lay up to 24 and a half, go with the Falcons.
Yeah, the one thing too I like is, just in case, I agree with you with weight, especially with the MAC. Sometimes it's hard to get news out of there about what's going on. So one thing I'll say is if you're someone who's gets an itchy trigger finger and wants to jump on it, Bazelak has been hurt in the past, and Camden Orth has played a bunch, so he is experienced. So it's not like you're throwing in some true freshman. I think getting Orth was the backup last year. I think having him there kind of gives you a little bit of a security blanket. Yeah, I agree with you. I think.
Well, in the last game they went with Lucian Anderson III, and that's when everything fell apart against Northern Illinois. So that's my major concern. He goes 3 for 10 in that spot with a pick. They were kind of drawing dead. So
they go with Orthen, right?
He hasn't taken a snap yet this season. So just as a heads up.
That's weird. Well, he's the backup last year. So well, then forget everything I just said. Yeah. All right. I like it though.
All right. We'll close out now with the G5 Underdog Moneyline Parlay. We had some hits early. It's time to get the band back together and play some hits. Would you like to go first? Let's mix it up this week. What are you adding to it?
You mentioned it. We got to play some hits. And sometimes you just got to start with Old Faithful. Start with a classic. Start with a timeless piece that everyone knows and everyone loves. So I'm going to cheat a little bit here. You ready to? David, enter some boo drops here. Give me Buffalo plus 100.
Okay. Sure.
At home against Western Michigan. Look, Buffalo has beaten Northern Illinois and Toledo, two of the favorites to win the MAC. Western Michigan has beaten Bethune-Cookman, Ball State, and Akron. Why are they favorite on the road here? You talked about last week the coaching upgrade with Pete Lambeau coming in against Toledo, and that showed clear as day. They were 14-point dogs, won outright. Really a never in doubt game either. CJ Agbana is running this offense so much better than Cole Snyder did last year. He isn't as dynamic as a passer, but he protects the football. Just one interception this year. He's dangerous with his legs. He just operates the offense, does his job, protects the football. They have two good backs in Henderson and Burksdale, and the Western Michigan defense has not been good at all. They are 129th in the country in success rate on defense. They gave up 42 points to Ball State, who can't pass, 24 to Akron, over 6 yards per play in both games. And this Buffalo defense has been very good. You were all over it last year. They're in the top half, or last week. They were in the top half of the country in success rate. We've talked at length about Sean Dolak dominating in the middle of that defense at linebacker. They have a really good secondary. They're 4th in the country in tackling, 6th in coverage grade at Pro Football Focus. And other than getting boat raced by the absolute wagon that is UConn, they have not allowed more than 20 points in 3 of their last 4 games. So the Bulls are undefeated in conference play. I think that continues here at home against the Broncos.
It's an overused cliche or slang, putting the clamps on somebody, putting an offense in a box. If you're top 10 in coverage and you're top 10 in tackling, that's putting the clamps on people. Yep. They're so fundamentally sound. The coaching shines through. And I agree. This is just one of those teams that, for whatever reason, the public's never behind. Every conference has one of these. And in the MAC, you would think that there shouldn't be any teams that are negatively looked upon from a public perspective because they're all kind of looked down upon. But for some reason, Buffalo continues with this. So let's just take advantage of it.
I've never had a more profitable run than betting every single week on 2019-2020 Buffalo. With it was Tyree Jackson was the quarterback in 2019. That's just when Leipold was the quarterback. And they had little Jarrett Patterson running for 400 yards a game. They were dogs in every game. They ended up going to the MAC title. I believe they lost to Northern Illinois in the MAC championship game. But I bet on them every single week. And just Jarrett Patterson, just my sweet baby boy. Oh, God, I love that team so much.
All right, we didn't coordinate this, but if you cheated a little bit and you went with a team that's not much, technically they're an underdog, I'm going to go with a bigger swing. I'm going to go for a team that has 0 wins on the whole season.
Why are you doing this?
Because you know what? I feel it. It's time for our brothers and sisters in West Texas to bang the drum in El Paso. The Miners are getting to win. They're plus 220 over FIU. As I mentioned, they played 6 games. They lost all of them. But 5 of those teams that beat them are likely going bowling. Only Colorado State is really on the fence, but I think we can agree they're starting to play a little bit better. They should probably get to 6 wins. Nebraska, Liberty, they could spend some time in the top 25 this season. Sam Houston has been a wagon. Western Kentucky is certainly a threat in Conference USA. That's a rough schedule, particularly in a year 0. Now, if you follow FIU as we do, beyond just all the Pitbull sound drops, you probably have whiplash because they're so up and down. They force 5 picks and crush Central Michigan. Then they get mauled by Cam Fancher, of all people, and FAU. Then they follow that up with a loss to FCS Monmouth. Then a win over the Corps of La Tech by 7. They take Liberty to overtime. As I said, up and down with this FIU team. They're coming off an emotional, potential season-defining overtime win against Liberty. When you're in Conference USA, everybody is looking to take down Liberty. They had their chance. They couldn't get it done. That's an emotionally deflating moment. Now, when you look at their defense, yes, they played, arguably their best of the entire season against Liberty. But when you look at it as a whole, you can move the ball freely on FIU. 109th in success rate. They drop into zone or some kind of zone hybrid on 80% of their defensive snaps. They play a lot of quarters coverage, and they blitz slightly below average. So basically what they're doing is keeping everything in front of them, allowing teams to pick them apart underneath and saying, we're just not going to give up explosives. And they've been very good in that regard. They don't give up explosives. But when you look at UTEP this year, I think they have potentially the opportunity between the run game and short passing game to get some momentum and to move the ball down the field. It looks like Cade McConnell will be a scratch due to injury in this game, which means we get Skylar Locklear. He looked fine against Southern Utah in an overtime loss, and he completed 26 passes against Liberty. I don't think it's a huge difference, and maybe this is the reason why this number is north of 2-1 in terms of the money line. I think they're comparable quarterbacks. So he also gives us a bit of a dual threat. in being able to use his legs in this spot. FIU to me is just, by Conference USA standards at least, just so Jekyll and Hyde. Sometimes they come out and they absolutely lay an egg. I think situationally, this is an opportunity to play them off of that deflating loss. And UTEP, I said it in the preseason, yes, it's year zero. I didn't think they would go winless. They got to score one in Conference USA play. I think this is a spot for them to do it.
Listen, we need to turn things around and have good vibes on the show. So all I'm going to say is nobody go look at my action app and look at my FIU -3.5 ticket. Everyone let's don't look at my app until Thursday. That's all I'm going to say. I had that on the cutting floor, so I won't bring it up.
Now, I understand as we record here that there's games on Tuesday night that are currently being played. There's games on Wednesday that we didn't touch upon because we want to make sure that listeners have an opportunity to play as much of our advice as possible, or to fade, depending on how you're feeling about us right at this moment. Because of that, do you think you have fewer cutting room floor picks, or was this everything that you had on the card?
Yeah, I only had two. I wanted to mention FIU, but I didn't because you just brought it up. The one I had on the cutting room floor, honestly, was I was really toying with Louisiana -3.5 against Coastal. I know you took the shots last week. I was hesitant. I still don't think Tim Beck's a good coach. But I actually think Louisiana's pretty good. I think Louisiana has looked good. The only thing that scared me away is it's one of those things where, like, we were talking on the playoff show how the Sun Belt needs Louisiana to run the table and meet JMU in the conference title game. And that kind of just the way the Sun Belt works, that means they'll lose outright this week. But I actually think Louisiana's pretty good. So I've toyed with playing them against the Chants. I'll probably end up locking that in at some point, but for now it's on the cutting room floor.
I talked about FIU being Jekyll and Hyde. I think it may be time to buy on Tucker Gleason. We've basically hammered against Toledo twice, hitting a money line upset and a sweat-free pick with Buffalo. For them to be an underdog now to Northern Illinois in a game that's probably going to be one possession, a little bit ugly, I'll just take the points in that spot. So that was very close for me. There's a couple other games. Is Miami of Ohio back? Gabbard had a phenomenal game. I understand opponent adjusted. We have to keep that in mind. But have they turned the corner and will heat up, in October and November as they have in recent years? Potentially. That's more of a wait and see for me.
The thing we should have really noticed as we were talking last week too with the Toledo pick and Gleason. And this kind of is not only Gleason for specifically as a quarterback, but kind of, Jason Kendall's MO as a coach. Toledo's one of those teams that's either going to win and cover or lose outright. So in hindsight, we waited for the Buffalo 14. Like, if you're someone making your picks, keep that in mind. If you want to take Toledo as a favorite, they'll probably – it's because Gleason's either going to be awesome or he's going to throw 3 picks. So if you like an underdog against Toledo, take the money line because they're the more talented team. So if they play to their talent level, they'll win easily. And if they shit themselves, they're going to lose outright. So that's kind of how I would play Toledo going forward, especially with the way Gleason has played all year.
For Mike Einello, I'm Mike Calabrese. This has been the Group of 5 Deep Dive under the Big Bets on Campus banner. Programming reminder, as always, we'll have Colin and Stuck running through the entire Week 8 card leading up to Georgia and Texas on the 40 acres there in Austin. And then on Saturday, we'll have the live show, Brett McMurphy, Colin Stuck, myself, as well as Johnny Football and all of his plays and insight into the world of college football. So be sure to check that out live over on our BBOC channel. That channel is a great way to interact and to support our show. You can go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, as well as drop a review over at Apple Podcasts. As I said earlier in the season, we're inching closer to 1,000 reviews. That's a huge threshold for us. We're at 4.9 stars out of 5, so we really appreciate it. 5-star reviews. We'll be sure to give out some stuff in the coming weeks. I'm overdue for a few reviews to give out some free parlays, so I'm happy to do that in our next episode. So now's a good time to jump in there. And we'll be picking out some of the reviews to also give out some Action Network swag from our producer, Matt Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening, and please have a great college football week. It is wall-to-wall every single day. If you're listening, it's probably some football just hours away. It's a beautiful time of year. Enjoy it.